The ocean depths hold secrets that, well, they continue to just fascinate us, don't they? And maybe none are more intriguing than the idea of intelligent life thriving, way down beneath the waves.
Absolutely.
Today, we're going to plunge into some really groundbreaking research, mostly from the last couple of years, say 2023 to 2025. We're focusing on cetaceans, specifically whales.
And there's so much happening. Communication, cognition, their culture, even legal questions and new tech.
Exactly. We've gathered a bunch of sources for this deep dive, a big research review, scientific articles, news reports, even info straight from the project websites doing this work.
Right, a really compelling mix.
And our mission, really, is to pull out the most fascinating bits, give you a kind of shortcut to understanding these, well, frankly, exciting developments.
So where are we heading?
Okay, 4 main areas. First, the big one, decoding whale talk, especially Project CETI and sperm whales. Then whale brains, what their structure tells us about how smart they might be.
Ah, the neuroanatomy. Always fascinating.
Then humpback whale songs, their whole cultural world, and these surprising links to human language.
The cultural transmission aspect is incredible there.
And finally, this growing push to recognize whales legally as persons, perhaps,
right,
and how technology is, kind of enabling this whole shift in thinking.
Okay, a lot to cover.
Yeah, get ready for some aha moments, I think. Let's dive in.
All right, so let's start with Project CETI, the Cetacean Translation Initiative. Big, ambitious goal. Decode sperm whale clicks using AI and these massive underwater microphone arrays.
Okay, sperm whale clicks, they're not songs like humpbacks, right? They're more like patterns.
Exactly. They use these Morse code-like click patterns called codas. And the big news from May 2024 was CETI finding evidence for what they're calling a potential sperm whale phonetic alphabet.
Whoa, okay. Phonetic alphabet, like letters building words.
Sort of. The idea is that their codas aren't just random. They seem to have context and structure, maybe combining basic sound units into meaningful sequences. It's analogous to how our letters combine into words. That's the key, the combinatorial potential.
So meaningless clicks combining to make meaning.
Potentially. That's the hypothesis they're exploring. And they broke it down further. They identified 4 basic elements within the codas. Rhythm, tempo, rubato, which is like variation in tempo and ornamentation.
Ornamentation, like little extra clicks.
Precisely, like flourishes. Whales can apparently mix and match these elements, make tiny sub-second adjustments, add extra clicks, and it seems to depend on the social situation, maybe who they're talking to, what's going on around them.
So it's a really flexible system, not just fixed calls.
It seems incredibly flexible. It suggests a much richer social communication system than we might have guessed.
And this connects to that idea of duality of patterning.
Yeah.
That's a big deal in human language, right?
It is. It's one of the hallmarks. Combining meaningless units, like sounds or phonemes, into meaningful ones, words. If whales are doing something similar with clicks, that's huge.
Okay, so how on earth are they gathering the data to even suggest this?
Oh, the setup is incredible. Project CETI has this massive hydrophone array, hundreds of them, synchronized, over a 20 by 20 kilometer area off Dominica.
20 kilometers, wow.
Yeah. Then they use aerial drones to track whale movements, and the drones even relay signals. Plus, they attach these gentle suction cup tags onto the whales.
Suction cups. Do they stay on?
For hours, yeah. They record depth, how the whale is oriented, and importantly, the clicks from the whale's own perspective. And they even use AUVs, autonomous underwater vehicles, for close-up audio and video, little underwater drones.
So they're getting sound, movement, depth, behavior.
Yeah.
Trying to link it all together.
Exactly. Linking the vocalizations to the behaviors, diving, socializing, mother-calf interactions. Context is everything.
Right. But then the sheer amount of data must be astronomical.
Terabytes upon terabytes. So analysis is key. Phase 1 is just gathering it all. Phase 2 is processing, annotating, matching clicks to whales, to behaviors.
Okay.
Phase 3 is where the AI comes in. Machine learning, deep neural networks. They're using algorithms to find patterns, cluster similar codas, measure all the acoustic features.
Are they using AI models similar to what, like, Google uses for language?
Yeah, techniques inspired by natural language processing, trying to find structure without knowing the meaning yet. Self-supervised learning is a big part of it.
So the AI can spot, say, when a whale adds ornamentation in response to another.
That's the idea. Analyzing timing, extra clicks. And they use really rigorous stats permutation tests to make sure the patterns are real, not just chance.
But, and this is the big caveat, I guess, they still don't know what it means.
Exactly. Pratyusha Sharma, the lead author on that big paper, was very clear. We do not know yet what they're saying. We see structure, a potential alphabet, but not the dictionary or grammar.
It could be about identity, what they're doing, mood. But we can't translate, let's go find squid yet.
Not even close. We lack the Rosetta Stone. So, the next big step for CETI is behavioral correlation.
Matching codas to specific events.
Right. Social interactions, environmental changes, predators showing up, finding food, hoping those contexts reveal meaning.
How much data do they think they need for, like, a real translation?
The estimate is, brace yourself, millions, possibly billions, of codas for robust AI models. Think Google Translate for whales. It's a monumental task.
Wow. And they're planning playback experiments eventually to test understanding.
That's phase 4 in their roadmap. But there are ethical considerations there too, of course. Disturbance, anthropomorphism, they're very aware of that.
It's incredible, though. As David Gruber, CETI's founder, said, it opens this possibility of an incredibly complex system. It really makes you wonder about the minds behind those clicks.
Absolutely. And that leads us perfectly into the brains themselves.
Right, because these aren't just any brains. We're talking the largest brains on Earth. Sperm whales up to 8 or 9 kilos. That's almost 6 times a human brain.
It's staggering. But, as neuroscientists always remind us, size isn't the whole story. Internal organization, neuron density, total neuron count, that's crucial.
Okay, so what do we know about that? Is it just a scaled-up human brain?
Not really. There's a general mammalian trend, bigger brain, lower neuron density. And studies, like one from 2019 on dolphins and orcas, confirmed this. Orcas have lower density than smaller dolphins.
Ah, so fewer neurons per square inch, so to speak.
Kind of, BUT. And this blew my mind when I first read it. Because the orca brain is just so massive in volume, the total number of cortical neurons likely exceeds humans.
Wait, really? More cortical neurons than us?
It's strongly suggested. And long-finned pilot whales are thought to be in the same ballpark, maybe around 12 billion cortical neurons, similar to human estimates.
So the raw processing power, the sheer number of cells in the thinking part of the brain, could be comparable or even greater.
The hardware potential seems to be there, yes. It really challenges that old idea of human uniqueness in brain cell count. They have the equipment for complex cognition, even if it's wired differently.
Okay, what about the structure? I've heard whale brains are incredibly wrinkly.
Extremely wrinkly. That's called gyrification, the folding of the cortex. Cetacean brains are some of the most convoluted out there, more so than most land mammals.
And those folds increase surface area.
Right.
More space for neurons.
Exactly. More surface area, potentially more connections. It's like crumpling up a huge sheet of paper to fit it in a smaller space, but keeping all the surface area for computation. And interestingly, humpback brains show folding complexity similar to much smaller dolphins.
Huh. Any other weird structures?
Well, they've observed these modular islands of neurons in humpback brains. The idea is these might help efficient communication across that massive folded cortex, sort of like specialized processing hubs.
And are scientists finding areas that look like, say, our prefrontal cortex?
They're finding analogs, yes. Ongoing MRI and histology work shows regions that seem functionally similar to ours, just massively expanded and folded differently. They've been doing mapping work on the dolphin prefrontal cortex, for instance.
Okay, but what about specific cell types? Anything unusual?
Yes, this is fascinating. They found von Economo neurons, or spindle cells, in large whales like humpbacks and sperm whales. These were first reported back in 2006 and confirmed since.
And those are special, right? What do they do in us?
In humans and other primates, they're linked to social emotions, empathy, social awareness, rapid intuitive judgments. They're found in brain regions involved in social cognition.
So whales have them too. That suggests
Convergent evolution. Whales and primates diverged ages ago, but both evolved complex social lives. It seems these specialized cells might be crucial for navigating those social worlds, leading to similar solutions in very different brains.
That's amazing. Anything else new from brain studies?
Yeah, recent genomic work, 2023, pointed to molecular adaptations in whale brain cells linked to longevity and handling low oxygen, which makes perfect sense for long-lived, deep-diving animals.
But there are still mysteries, right? Things that don't quite fit.
Oh, definitely. Like the hippocampus involved in memory. It's relatively small in whales compared to primates, yet whales have incredible memories for migration routes spanning continents, for complex songs learned over years. How is that encoded if not in a large hippocampus like ours?
Good question. What about other parts?
The cerebellum is enormous in whales. We associate it with motor control, but in whales, it might be heavily involved in processing sensory information for swimming, echolocation, integrating all that complex underwater data.
And I think I read something about neuron density in diving.
Yeah, a 2019 hypothesis suggested that the lower cortical neuron density in deep divers might actually be an adaptation to conserve oxygen during those incredibly long dives. Fewer active neurons might mean less oxygen demand. Still a hypothesis, though.
It really sounds like, as that neuroscientist said, exploring an alien supercomputer.
It really does. We're using better tools now, advanced 3D imaging, techniques like isotropic fractionation to get accurate neuron counts from stranded whale brains, but we're still just scratching the surface of how these magnificent brains work.
The potential for complex thought is clearly there, even if it's organized in ways we're only beginning to appreciate.
Exactly, and that leads us nicely into whale culture, particularly the songs of humpback whales. They're such a clear example of non-human culture.
Yeah, these long, complex songs that change over time, and crucially, seem to be socially learned and spread through populations.
And recent research has found some really intriguing patterns within those songs. A late 2023 study in Science discovered something remarkable about humpback songs from New Caledonia.
What was that?
They found the songs obey Zipf's law of frequency.
Zipf's law.
Mhm.
Okay, refresh my memory. That's about word frequency in human language, right?
Exactly. The most common word appears about twice as often as the second most common, 3 times as often as the third, and so on down the list. It's a specific mathematical pattern found across human languages.
And they found this in whale song units.
Yes. When they broke the songs down into recurring sound units, phrases, or themes, the frequency distribution of those units followed Zipf's law.
What does that imply, though? Why is that significant?
It suggests, potentially, that whales might be balancing communicative efficiency, just like humans do. We use common words frequently and save complex or rare words for specific situations. Zipf's law is thought to reflect pressure for efficient communication, making common things easy and short. Finding it in whale song hints they might be optimizing their signal bandwidth, too.
Huh. Balancing effort and information. Interesting. Was that the only language-like pattern?
Nope. A 2025 study in Science Advances by Mason Youngblood found evidence for 2 more language laws in various whale vocal sequences.
2 more. Okay, which ones?
The law of brevity, which is related to Zipf's, basically saying more frequent units tend to be shorter. Think the bow versus hippopotamus, and Menzareth's law.
Menzareth's law. That one's less familiar.
Menzareth's law states that the longer a construct is, like a word or sentence, the shorter its constituent parts tend to be. So longer words often have shorter syllables. Longer sentences might have shorter clauses on average. It's another efficiency principle.
And whales follow these too.
Humpback and blue whale songs showed strong evidence for both brevity, frequent units are shorter, and Menzareth's longer song sequences had shorter internal components. And Menzareth's law actually showed up in 11 different whale and dolphin species they looked at. Brevity was clearest in species like humpbacks.
So this idea of communicative efficiency seems widespread in cetaceans.
It really looks that way. Compressing information, saving energy, it makes sense in their environment.
But did all species show it?
Interestingly, no. Some smaller dolphin species didn't really follow these laws. The researchers suggested their high-frequency clicks might be used differently more for stealthy echolocation, maybe less bound by these efficiency pressures seen in long song bouts. Different needs, different rules.
Okay, so we have these language-like patterns in the structure and efficiency. But is it language?
Ah, the million-dollar question. And most experts, like leading humpback song researcher Ellen Garland, are quite clear. Whale song is not a language.
Why not? What's missing?
The key thing seems to be combinatorial syntax. Human language lets us take words, meaningful units, and combine them in novel ways following grammatical rules to create essentially infinite new meanings. Whale song doesn't seem to do that.
So it's more like music.
That's a common analogy. A song might convey a whole message, perhaps fitness for mating, group identity, but the individual notes or phrases don't seem to be rearranged freely to mean different things, like words in a sentence.
And all the males in one area sing the same song at the same time, right?
Roughly, yes. Which makes it feel more like a shared cultural tradition, like everyone singing the same anthem rather than a flexible conversation.
But the way these traditions spread is just mind-blowing. The song revolutions.
Absolutely incredible. An entire population can ditch their current song and adopt a completely new one learned from neighbors. like a hit song going viral across an ocean basin.
Wasn't there a really striking example in the South Pacific?
Yes, between 2009 and 2015, humpbacks off New Caledonia repeatedly learned complex new songs migrating in from Australian populations. And the learning was astonishingly accurate.
They didn't simplify it. They copied it exactly.
According to Dr. Jenny Allen, who studied this, they actually learned the exact sounds without simplifying or leaving anything out. High-fidelity social learning on a massive scale.
That suggests incredible auditory memory and learning capacity, maybe beyond any other non-human species we know.
It certainly puts them way up there. They likely learn these songs at shared migratory spots or feeding grounds where populations mix.
And these song fads can sweep across oceans.
Yeah, they've tracked song types moving eastward from Australia, across to French Polynesia, even reaching Ecuador over a period of years. It's cultural transmission on an oceanic scale.
It really drives home the point about non-human culture. But has everyone agreed it's social learning?
Mostly yes, but there is a minority view. A 2021 study by Eduardo Mercado suggested maybe whales aren't copying directly, but are more like jazz musicians, improvising new songs based on similar underlying rules or patterns. So they end up sounding similar without direct mimicry.
Interesting idea.
Yeah.
Like composing within constraints.
Exactly. Most evidence points towards social learning being dominant, especially that high-fidelity copying in the South Pacific. But Mercado's idea reminds us we still have things to learn about the exact mechanism. Tracking individuals in real time as songs change would help settle it.
Okay, so humpbacks demonstrate complex culture, transmitted socially, with intriguing structural parallels to language, even if it's not language itself.
Precisely. It enriches our view of animal cognition and reminds us that culture isn't uniquely human. And these songs serve whale purposes, mating, social cohesion. We need to understand them on their own terms.
And research is looking into other cultural aspects too, like teaching or dialects.
Yes. Exploring if things like feeding techniques are taught, or if different social calls represent distinct dialects or cultural groups, even how different species react to each other's sounds, like blue and fin whales, seemingly avoiding frequency overlap. The tapestry of whale culture is just starting to unfold.
And this growing appreciation for their intelligence, their culture, it inevitably leads to challenging questions about how we treat them legally and ethically.
Exactly. Which brings us to this really complex and evolving debate about whale personhood and rights.
Right. The idea that maybe whales, because of their demonstrable intelligence and culture, shouldn't just be treated as, natural resources or property.
Currently, in most legal systems, that's exactly what they are, objects of the law, not subjects with rights.
So what does legal personhood actually mean in this context? It's not saying they're human. Right.
Not at all. Legal personhood simply means an entity that the law recognizes as capable of holding rights and duties. Corporations are legal persons. Some rivers have been granted legal personhood in certain places.
Like the Wangani River in New Zealand.
Exactly. So the argument some are making is, if a corporation or a river can have legal standing and rights, why not a highly intelligent, socially complex being like a whale?
Have there been actual court cases trying to establish this for animals?
Yes, the Non-Human Rights Project, NHRP, in the U.S. has been particularly active, filing lawsuits seeking writs of habeas corpus, basically, arguing for release from unlawful confinement for chimpanzees and elephants in captivity.
And how have those gone?
So far, they haven't succeeded in freeing the animals via habeas corpus. U.S. courts have generally rejected the idea that animals can be legal persons capable of bearing rights and duties, which is a key sticking point.
The rights and duties argument, critics say that's a double standard, right? Because human infants or people in comas have rights but no duties.
That's exactly the counterargument. But courts have mostly held the line. However, these cases have forced judges to engage with the scientific evidence of animal cognition and autonomy, and some dissenting opinions have acknowledged the strength of that evidence.
So, baby steps, maybe? What about specifically for whales?
The NHRP laid some groundwork, using arguments about autonomy in cases like the one for the orca Lolita Tokite under the Endangered Species Act. That case was dismissed on other grounds, but it raised the profile. Similar arguments have been made for other captive cetaceans, usually focusing on the conditions of confinement.
And internationally. Any progress?
Well, there was the 2010 Declaration of Rights for Cetaceans, right to life, liberty, freedom from captivity. Not legally binding, but influential. And India's 2013 move declaring dolphins non-human persons and banning dolphinariums, was a major landmark.
That was significant. What about more recently, like 2023, 2025?
We're seeing a real surge of activity, especially driven by indigenous leadership and international efforts. The Hiwaka Declaration for the Ocean, signed by Polynesian indigenous leaders in March 2024, is huge.
What does that declaration do?
It explicitly recognizes whales as legal persons with inherent rights from an indigenous cultural perspective. They frame whales as tonga, sacred treasures, and ancestors. It's not formal state law yet, but it's a powerful political and cultural statement aimed at pressuring governments.
And what rights are they asserting for whales?
Things like freedom of movement, the right to a healthy environment, and significantly the right to maintain their cultural traditions, their songs, their migration routes. Mir Tekoko, involved in the initiative, specifically mentioned protecting their natural behavior and cultural expression, which includes their language.
Wow. Linking legal rights directly to their cultural lives.
Exactly. It's a perspective grounded in kinship, aiming for stronger protections. There's also a pragmatic economic angle being discussed by people like Ralph Chami, arguing that assigning economic value to whales as living entities under a personhood framework could lead to real financial consequences for harming them, like massive fines.
Integrating market ideas with rights. Interesting. What about rights of nature laws? Are they relevant?
Yes, definitely part of the picture. Panama's 2022 Rights of Nature law explicitly includes marine life. Ecuador and Bolivia have constitutional rights of nature. Ecuador's courts even used it in 2023 to protect marine areas from mining. These laws shift away from nature as property, though they don't always grant specific personhood to individual species. But some places are considering it Costa Rica for bees, Panama for sea turtles.
So the legal landscape is definitely shifting in some parts of the world. Anything in the U.S. or similar jurisdictions?
There have been bills and resolutions introduced, for instance in New York and California around 2023, acknowledging cetacean intelligence and calling for phasing out captivity. More symbolic, perhaps, but shows the direction of thinking.
And how does technology feed into this legal debate?
Legal scholars like Cesar Rodriguez Garavito argue that science and tech bolster the case. As we learn more about their complex minds and communication, think Project CETI potentially giving us insights into their perspectives, it becomes harder to deny their subjectivity.
Like the idea of AI enabling whale testimony someday.
It sounds sci-fi, but that's the kind of provocative idea being floated. Could documenting whale social interactions, maybe even caregiving or responses to harm, challenge that all rights require duties argument? Could we show they have social responsibilities within their own communities?
A National Geographic article even had the headline, "Whales could one day defend themselves in court in their own words."
Right. It captures that cutting edge where science, tech, and law are intersecting. But we should be clear, courts still mostly dismiss these arguments, often falling back on the need for human-like legal accountability.
So what are the practical challenges? Even if personhood were granted, who would represent them? How would it be enforced?
Big questions. You'd likely need a guardian system, like for children. Enforcement, especially across international waters, would be tough. Look at the Polynesian Declaration. It relies on political pressure for now. There's the slippery slope argument, if whales, who's next? Though proponents say we can focus on clear cases like great apes and cetaceans.
And cultural differences in legal frameworks, indigenous versus Western ideas.
Absolutely. It involves a fundamental shift from a human-centered, anthropocentric view to a more life-centered, biocentric, or ecocentric one. And it could mean real legal obligations for humans changing shipping routes, stricter noise rules, protecting migration corridors based on whale interests.
Have courts ever considered whale culture in rulings?
Interestingly, yes. In places like New Zealand and Australia, courts have sometimes acknowledged the cultural importance of whale populations or song traditions when considering impacts, framing the loss of a song lineage as a type of irreparable harm.
And what about the ethics of using tech to engage with them? Do whales get a say?
That's a crucial point raised by ethicists like Jonathan Balcom, the principle of consent. How do we ensure our research, especially interactive research, respects their autonomy? Project CETI, for instance, emphasizes passive listening as much as possible.
So this whole push for whale personhood is really at the forefront of law, ethics, and science, especially with these 2023-2025 developments.
It absolutely is. Public opinion seems to be shifting too, supporting rights for highly intelligent animals. And even international bodies are noticing UNESCO apparently considered designating certain whale gatherings as intangible cultural heritage in 2023, recognizing their culture.
It's a fundamental re-envisioning, isn't it? From commodities to communities with rights.
As legal scholar Thomas White put it, maybe the question isn't if they qualify, but when and how we'll recognize it. Translating moral insights into legal reality is the challenge.
And so much of this new understanding and these challenging questions are being driven by technology.
Completely. The advances in tech, just in the 2023-2025 period, are transforming how we study whales. It's enabling real-time monitoring, massive data collection, AI filtering. It's a new era.
And it's not just about pure science, right? It's having practical impacts.
Huge impacts, preventing ship strikes, understanding noise pollution. Let's look at some key technologies. First, distributed hydrophone networks.
We touched on CEDI's array. Are there others?
Yes, several systems. Large arrays continuously recording over wide areas. They use triangulation to locate whales. Many now transmit data in real time via buoys using satellite or cellular links.
So scientists can listen in live.
Yes, and increasingly, the public or ship managers too. NOAA's Robots for Whales initiative in the U.S. Northeast streams bioacoustic data. Detections of endangered North Atlantic right whale calls get relayed almost instantly to websites and apps used by mariners.
So a ship captain could get an alert saying, right whale detected near your location.
Exactly, leading to voluntary speed reductions or rerouting. It's making a difference. And the tech is getting smarter edge computing on the buoys.
Meaning the buoy itself analyzes the sound.
Right. Onboard processors run detection algorithms, identify whale calls, and just transmit an alert instead of sending massive amounts of raw audio data. Saves bandwidth and power. There are even portable passive acoustic buoys being developed for rapid deployment.
And they have to filter out all the background noise, I imagine.
Oh, yeah. Sophisticated noise filtering algorithms are crucial to pull the whale signals out from ship noise, sonar, etc.
Okay, besides listening, what about seeing them? Drones.
Drones have become indispensable. Both aerial drones, quadcopters, fixed wing for quiet tracking, high-res video, even checking whale health by analyzing blowhole spray or body condition from above.
And they help with the tags, too.
Yes, like in Project CETI, drones can act as communication relays for signals from the whale-mounted tags. And there's cool new work like the Avatar system developed by CETP and Harvard in 2024.
What does that do?
It uses reinforcement learning, a type of AI, to autonomously direct drones to where a whale is likely to surface based on acoustic signals and known dive patterns. Gets close-up data without chasing the whale, reducing stress.
Smart. What about underwater drones?
Underwater autonomous vehicles, AUVs, are being used more too. NOAA has trialed them for detecting whales in remote offshore areas, basically sending robot listeners into the deep.
And the tags themselves are getting better.
Definitely. Soft robotic tags, better suction cups for longer attachment, designed to record detailed sound and movement for hours or days, then detach for retrieval. A Harvard team tested improved non-invasive suction devices in 2023.
All this tech generates mountains of data. How do they cope?
Machine learning is the only way. You simply can't have humans listening to or watching it all. Deep learning models, adapted from speech recognition and computer vision, are used for detection and classification.
Any cool examples?
Google AI partnered with Fisheries and Oceans Canada to train a neural network on orca recordings. It now helps monitor endangered southern resident orcas in the Salish Sea in real time, triggering alerts. Similar systems use AI to detect right whale calls and warn ships.
And AI helps with noise filtering, too.
Yes, even Edge AI running AI filters directly on the buoys or drones to clean up the signal before transmission. Low-power AI chips are making this feasible even in remote locations.
Can AI tell different whales apart or different groups?
It's getting there. AI is being used to classify whale dialects and potentially identify individuals by their unique vocal signatures. A 2024 study used a transformer neural network similar to those used in large language models to cluster sperm whale codas and identify whale clans with high accuracy. Kind of a Shazam for whales in the making.
Wow. So what's the big picture impact of all this tech on conservation?
It's enabling much more dynamic management, adjusting shipping lanes based on real-time whale locations, rapidly spotting unusual events like acoustic arrays, detecting weird vocalizations near New Zealand in 2023, which led to discovering a whole new blue whale feeding ground.
That's incredible. Any other applications?
Infrared cameras on drones for nighttime monitoring, especially during calving season. There are even trials of putting edge AI detectors on ships, using bone-mounted sensors to warn of nearby whales directly. Plus, better tracking data helps model how climate change is affecting migration patterns.
But technology is just a tool, right? But there must be ethical considerations.
Absolutely. Over-reliance, potential disturbance from drones or tagging, groups like the Moth Message and the Hydrophone Project advocate for the precautionary principle. Deploy tech ethically.
Though many tools, like the listening buoys, operate passively.
True, the whales often aren't even aware. But overall, the impact of tech on whale research feels comparable to how space telescopes revolutionized astronomy. We're entering an era of digital cetology, seeing and hearing things we never could before.
So wrapping this all up, it really feels like 2023 to 2025 has been a period of, well, dramatic progress in understanding whales, communication, cognition, culture, law, tech. It's moving fast.
It really is. The convergence of AI, better sensors, and dedicated research efforts is yielding fascinating insights.
For me, the key takeaways are Project CETI is making real strides in understanding sperm-whale communication structure, even if meaning is still elusive.
Right, the potential alphabet is a huge step.
Whale brains, while different, clearly have the hardware and the neuron numbers, the complexity for sophisticated thought.
Challenging our anthropocentric views of intelligence.
Humpback songs show undeniable non-human culture, with startling parallels to our own language patterns and transmission.
A powerful example of cultural evolution outside humanity.
The legal and ethical conversation around whale personhood is gaining serious momentum, driven by science, indigenous voices, and shifting legal frameworks.
It's pushing the boundaries of our legal systems.
And underpinning so much of this is cutting-edge technology, giving us unprecedented views into their world and new tools for conservation.
Technology as an enabler, definitely.
It leaves you wondering, though, if AI does eventually allow us to understand something of what whales are communicating, what will we learn about them, about ourselves, our place in things?
That's the big, potentially transformative question, isn't it?
And as we uncover more about their intelligence, their culture, what ethical obligations does that place on us? How does that change our relationship?
It forces a reckoning with our responsibilities towards other complex minds on this planet.
What would a world actually look like where non-human beings, like whales, have recognized legal rights? How would we navigate that?
It requires a fundamental shift in perspective, moving beyond just resource management to something more like interspecies diplomacy, perhaps.
And finally, how do we make sure these powerful new technologies are always used responsibly, truly for the benefit of the whales themselves?
That requires constant vigilance, ethical oversight, and prioritizing the whale's well-being in how we apply these tools.
Lots to think about. These truly are fascinating times for understanding the giants of the ocean. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.